In Ilorin Forest, a ragtag, funky ridiculous nobody, with their guild, will corpse walk and explore through dangerous caverns to depths. What lies beyond Azeroth's finest wild dungeons and settlements, to see who of them gets chicken fried the fastest or last along without their pants being on fire. This is how their story unfolds. This is An Azeroth Mortal's Boosting Adventures, Episode 7. Once ago, Laura and Judy also, after basically Shanty had been, corpseified in the library itself, was basically going around these sorts of, deserty places here in the Western Canyons in itself, where they were searching for a specific sort of like thievery, little kind of like demon, demon trickster. And that demon trickster himself, he liked it to ride out into the sunset all the time. Itself, and basically, kept wondering while he was riding out in the sunset where his fellow brethren had been going itself, where his fellow brethren had been going, and these brethren of his themselves, they had been going out into some sort of like sort of deserted, very deserted, almost like ghost town. They sort of grave itself, gravy kind of like place, very very pale, very boring, almost as boring as like hitting your head into pretty much a door itself, which is pretty basically the soldiers here itself. They have a and brain equal to pretty much hitting yourself in the door itself. They don't really do much itself. They are pretty much just like your average target dummy meatbag. And then that basically demon himself, when he was out and searching for his brethren while riding out in the sunset itself, Laurel and Judy were trying to pretty much find out what these brethren sort of like origins here in the Western Canyons where it's itself, because these demon tricksters here in the Wild Western, with yours truly sheriff in town here itself, where kind of like looking for work when it comes to basically having a cut of a sort of like heist, a little bit of a heist deal itself. This heist deal was that all these demon tricksters itself was to go and whack a bunch of whack-a-mole gnolls nearby itself. These gnolls themselves were also, allied with a bunch of other, pesky smarts, the smarts here in the Westerns, for those that forgot in some of the previous, basically, kind of like tales of ours. It itself is the horde here, as we like to refer to as the smart. These smarts with these demon trickster brethren themselves, they were pretty much like trying to chase after this sort of like huge gold mine in itself in the boring gray big huge city itself. I kind of look at like what happens when you go into pretty much a factory itself, and this factory has pretty much like only a bunch of clownish things, a little bit when you kind of like go into Scooby-Doo sort of like haunted houses it's itself, that gets very very sort of cinematic magic, sort of likey, but in this case, instead of being, very, very, soothing and comfortable and kind of like comfy, it gets a lot more, scarifying in itself. We like to call it scarifying here in the West itself. Here in the West itself, instead of basically, calling it sort of scary. The traditional humans, way of calling things scary is just called scary. They just like to call it scary. We like to be a little bit more, different than the normal humans here in the Western Canyons, and like the old centuries itself, century times here itself. Not to mention that the newspapers also they like to get as many sort of like chicken clicks. Chicken clicks. By this basically means that Judy and Laurel, when they basically come into the picture here itself, these demonic brethren and the smarts, when they were like on a train hijacking ride to see sort of like places in itself, they suddenly got interrupted by a bunch of, lazy, low-level sort of like cowboy recruits, and that were Laurel and Judy. Laurel and Judy themselves, they pretty much tried to, sort of like think about how can these demon tricksters and smarts basically be intervening before they get to this gold mine, and pretty much sort of take a little bit too much of sort of like the pie itself, the gold pie itself, because we also want a little bit of that gold pie ourselves, don't we, Judy? Yes, we do. My dear friend. I mean, these demonic tricksters, they don't really deserve this sort of like gold pie itself. We shall teach them a lesson. And so a bloody battle between Laurel and basically with Laurel and Judy, between the demonic like tricksters and smart comments itself. It happened all outside the place here that was called Gel Gallery here in a sort of like western southern Calgary, sort of like Canyon Calgary itself, Western Canyon Calgary. It's very hard to say for yours truly here itself, here in town, but you get the point, don't you? Anyway, the story pretty much then led it into that the bloody battle between these two basically sides itself really escalated so much that eventually a bunch of Scarlet users, nobody humans themselves decided to basically interrupt the battle there and come in and simply ask the following question. We should all ally with each other. We also want the same thing as you, whatever you are, kind of, weird creatures here. And we also want to make our Arcanist Dawn really happy in itself. So come on and join the crusade sort of like massacre inside our halls itself. And so they all joined these halls in itself. Laura and Judy, from being very good cowboy recruits, they became twisted and power hungry so much themselves that they became no better than the smarts as well as the demonic tricksters. And eventually, it all led to finding out the leader of basically these brainwashing, jacking maniacs, jacking, kind of like, elf sort of like, elf food in itself. Pretty much poop elf food, scumbag itself. And that was basically this guy here. We're killing himself, and that spinning he does there in itself is pretty much the cause for why everything went the way it did. And that's pretty much like Why? That sometimes you have to go in and investigate certain things, otherwise these certain things itself will go wrong for your share here in town itself, for you itself, to find out where, origins and kinks basically begin. Subscribe, you less. Hit the likey cow button below and share this video. Push the horse notification bell for more mooing Azeroth mortals boosting adventure shenanigans. And until next time.
Adios.